Hi, I'm Robin Fenner, and this is Maxwell's Playbooks series on the fitness roadmap. And with me again is my husband, Rudy Fenner. He has been a trainer for a couple of decades, I guess, and he has been instrumental in my transformation. And so I want to allow him to continue to share the information and knowledge that he has to help everyone get into a better shape physically and health-wise and all that. So today, we've already talked a little bit about the roadmap as you start out, why you're doing it, what's your why, what's your mindset, making sure that you talk to your doctor, that you have looked into your history, and you know the things that you need to watch out for, injuries and that sort of thing. So, but if you haven't done that, do that before you do anything else, because we don't want anyone getting into trouble or being injured with anything that we might show you. So today, we are down here in the gym. I call it the ludus because if you ever watch Spartacus, you know what a ludus is, where they trained all the gladiators, and that's what you're going to be, a gladiator. So I'm going to let Rudy kick it off. Today we're going to start with cardio, and I just want you to know this is a podcast, but we also are going to have this on YouTube. So if we're doing something we're talking about and you want to see what it looks like, you'll be able to look on YouTube on the Maxwell's Playbook channel and see a visual. With that, I'm going to let Rudy kick it off on cardio.
So thank you very much. It's always good to be here. And this is where I spend probably way too much time. Training is something that I've always loved to do. I continue to love and to be blessed incredibly, and have a place where I can do it all the time is still somewhat of a dream and sort of remarkable. So it's great to be here. To go back, to sort of dovetail off of what you talked about, and it really is true. When we talked earlier about the whys and we established the whys and everything, you said two things during your intro that I definitely want to grab on. One was transformation, and two was the doctors. The doctors, we talked about it before, not allowing it to become a checkbox and making this doctor thing far more intense and far more intentional, and that it isn't just making sure that we got an okay from the doctor that we wouldn't die if we worked out, but also establishing our pointers, our guides, if you will, in terms of what needs working out, what do we need to emphasize, what do we need to train. And we talked a little bit about somebody that has a bone mineral content issue where they're actually having bone density issues. Strength training is going to be that priority. There's some normal deterioration that occurs in bones. And so there is some strength training that would be something that would be absolutely a to-do after 30, after 25, 30. And so that all certainly makes sense. Strength training, the same thing. Bone mineral, muscle fiber begins to die in the early 20s. And if we don't do anything to stop those processes from occurring, bone mineral content is lost, bone muscle fiber is lost, and so there's a gradual atrophy that occurs in the body. And it's not unusual for us to end up, if we don't do anything to retard that progress, to end up bent over and weaker as we grow older. And this is going to all slow that trend, not negate it, because there's some things we can't. I can't do things now that I did when I was 20, but I definitely am better off than I would have been if I was 62 and never trained at all. Right. So It's all a part of it. So that's establishing the why and getting with the doctors and understanding where we are in all of those places and what we need to do for it, as well as any issues that we're fighting, any ongoing heart, lungs, anything that we're working with in terms of body issues, system issues that need to be addressed. That's why the doctor. The other thing is transformation. And I do believe that's a word we use at church a lot, and that's a true thing, because there's a transformation that goes on spiritually when scripture and everything is involved, but there's a transformation that goes on when you begin to work in a fitness space. I have talked a lot, and you have debated. No, you've argued with me about my point, but my point's well taken. You've had experienced labor twice, delivered 3 children. And when you finished, you had a body with emphasis, and I'm not giving away any trade secrets here, emphasis on your abdominal area, your core area that you really weren't unhappy with, and you really have felt at times like a surgeon's knife was the only option that was possible.
He's the quickest.
Well, quick. That's for sure. And I have,
But I didn't do that.
I have always debated put in the work, and working, especially working hard, has not been something. You're a cerebral, heavy brain person, high IQ person. Hands to work is something that hasn't been your first step. So working out is totally 100%. No. Working out is predominantly physical. There's a lot of mental in it. And I'm getting into the mental side when I say the transformation, because once you allowed yourself to enter into this world of work, and once you allowed yourself to stop feeling like I can't do this, or I can only do this if, and you began to just, as one of my favorite sayings, grab the shovel, dig the hole. When you went to that spot and you started doing the work, we've seen some fascinating things happen to your core.
That's true. I will say that I'm happy about that. But I also will say I felt like it was going to take a long time, because it takes you a while to get to a certain point, a certain type of shape or whatever, and it takes a while to kind of reshape that and kind of get the weight off or whatever changes that you're trying to make. You didn't get there overnight, so you're not going to get away from it overnight. So that is hard to kind of wrap your mind around sometimes.
Yeah.
But I was happy when I did begin to see the changes, and it didn't take as long as I thought to begin to see the changes.
Right, and I do think part of the process also with you was this garbage that has been delivered and continues to be delivered on a regular, ongoing basis. That is this measuring stick of what is good. How you look, your body shape, you're this, you're that. I am beyond sick and tired of being sick and tired of listening to people tell you how you should look. If anybody deserves an opinion, I've been with you for over 40 years. I deserve an opinion. I get to tell people. I get to tell you what I think. You don't have to listen. You don't have to do jack.
No.
But I do get an option. And I say this not only to you, but to every woman that's listening. And this was a sermon I preached to every woman that I ever trained. I will not allow anybody to tell you how you're supposed to look. I will not allow anybody to tell you what kind of condition you should be in, what kind of body shape you should have. That will be your decision. Now, I can help you establish what some parameters might be, and I can help you with some opinions, being honest with you and telling you what I think, if you ask me, but that's garbage. And so that was part of the problem, was understanding when they created Spanx, it was in direct response, I believe. Now, I wasn't at the meeting, so I don't know. But it was in direct response to somebody saying, I look better when I'm flatter. Right?
Yeah,
and
a lot of people are making money off of those things.
Yeah, and what I would have told that person was, but I need you to understand, there's a guy that's drooling over every not flat part of you that exists.
Yeah.
And that's a reality. And then, no, don't tell me different. I'm a guy. I've been a guy for a long time, 62 years. I got years involved in this guy stuff. And trust me, I don't care how many bumps, how many rumples, as the girls used to say, pumples, the word that my children made up when it was a thing that wasn't smooth. I don't care. There is a guy that's looking in admiration and just dreamy at what he's seeing. If you want to be smooth, buy the whole Spanx catalog. I don't care. I think that's fine. But because you want to do it. And I think a lot of your transformation started the day you got off of that road and you stopped caring and you kind of said, either this guy's a nut or he really means this. He really believes that I kind of look all right. Like, yeah.
I don't know if I thought about it quite that way.
Right, but that's what I saw.
Yeah.
And once that transformation occurred, then what happened is your goals and objectives became yours.
They definitely became mine.
They weren't
Yes. Yeah.
anybody
Yeah.
else's. And once they became yours, grab the shovel, dig the hole. Now we're going to
Yeah.
work. And so now I'm watching you doing planks in the floor. I'm watching you doing using the ab crunch. I bought an ab crunch bar 30 years ago. She looked at this and what a wonderful piece of furniture. That is so convenient to lay a piece of clothing on while I'm waiting to change.
Yeah. Hanger. Yeah.
And then you just kind of decided to embrace all of these things as yours. And just like magic, things started happening. I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? And for me, the transformation was complete. The day I was in the bedroom, dilly-dallying on a Saturday morning, and you walked past me in workout clothes and said, well, I'll see you downstairs.
Yeah, it was that and the gym too. I had to race to get my favorite bike at the gym.
Said, well,
we
no.
gotta go.
But see,
I gotta go
at the
back.
gym,
Yeah.
that was about getting to the bike. I'm talking about here at home.
Yeah.
I
Well,
was we were in the bedroom one day, and you may not have even noticed this.
No, it was more the
I'm
gym.
dilly-dallying around to come downstairs to work out on a Saturday. And you walked past me, said, I'll see you when you get downstairs. And I was, oh.
Well, I'm very focused. So when I have something like
Well,
that in mind,
until
too,
that moment, I'd not
I'm
seen
focused
it.
on whatever I'm doing.
Right.
Let's-
But I'd
I have
not
to mop
seen
the
it.
floor right now.
Until
Whatever it
that
is.
time, though, in terms of working out, I hadn't seen that. And that's when I realized the transformation in terms of this becoming a part of your lifestyle
Yeah.
was complete.
Well, yeah, and that's what I was saying too about getting in a habit, because once you do something for, I say 30 days, you begin to see the change, and you begin to say, hey, well, you know,
Mind
I'll
blowing
keep
to
this
me.
up, or you
It-
feel better, or you see some results from the work
It was
that you're putting
mind blowing
in.
to me. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm sorry, but and all of that, that's kind of like not what the focus was this week, but I wanted to just recap and make sure we tie a bow around that and make sure that people understand these aren't just words. It's not just jib jab that we're just giving you here as a speech, something that we wrote out. We did it, then we wrote it. So
That's true. Yes.
we've
Yeah.
lived into what we're talking about. And I just wanted to make sure that why and all of that stuff that being established with you, there is never a time in your life where you won't be working out. There's going to be some kind of workout going on all the time, but that took time. And I appreciate what you said about time, because I do want to give people, I think when you begin to think about this, grace is critical.
Yes.
Self-grace is critical.
Yes.
Right? And
You gotta
understand
do
it's going
it
to take time, and understand it's going to take work, and understand that some days you're going to get up and you're not going to feel like work. You're
That's
not going to
true.
feel like the work, and you're not going to feel like giving it the time, but this is what we do.
Yeah. And some days it's not going to be as great a workout as it was last
Yep.
week or the day before. Some weeks it's not going to be like that. But you say, you know, maybe this week just wasn't my week, but next week I'm going to jump back into it and get back into, you know,
Yes.
what I was doing and bring it back
And so
where it needs to be.
the reason that you had me here today, the main reason to
Yes.
get back on topic, I'm sorry, was to talk about different components of creating this program.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we have this foundational dialogue under a complete, I should say. When we talk about different aspects of fitness, you're basically talking about cardiovascular training, strength training, and nutrition. Understand that anything we talk about with this, I am not even remotely close. I am a neophyte compared to the people who make a living out of this. We are not professionals. We have gone to work every day and done all sorts of jobs that have nothing to do with this. We're doing this in spare time, on the side, but I think we are great people to talk about it, because I think this is where the majority of the world lives.
Yeah, it's kind of
They're
real life
getting
for
up in
us.
the morning
Yeah,
and they're
yeah.
going to work just like we are. They're dealing with kids in school getting bad grades and good grades and challenges with exams in colleges just like we did. They're dealing with kids, who grandchildren who have problems, who we're going through the whole cycle again just like us. And so we can speak to fitness being a part of the world and not the world, right?
True. Yes. Mhm.
And so
Absolutely.
when we're talking about cardiovascular training, strength training, and nutrition, it is with a realization that none of the world cares at all about this topic in terms of you. You're going to have to take every inch of this. This is almost like a war, and we're fighting over territory. Every hour to train, what you eat. You and I, one of the biggest arguments we've had about nutrition, and we're going to cover nutrition in depth later on, but I just want to give this sort of thing, this little topic, little piece, I should say. So many times you've said to me, well, I'd like to do this, but that's not something that everybody would eat.
That's true.
And I have been so sick and tired of that, because Everybody needs to figure out what to eat if it means that your nutrition has to be garbage in order for everybody else to eat. Again, this is a problem that I have spoken to with so many women that I've trained. Your kid either needs to learn how to independently prepare their meal or husband,
Yeah.
or they need to eat what you eat.
Yes. We
And
talked
that's
about
that's
that.
just
Yeah.
it. If I want to eat pancakes all the time, and the pancakes and the syrup are destroying your diet and what you're trying to do strategically, something's got to give. Why is it always you? Why do you have to always be the sacrificial lamb? And that was something that nutritionally we talked about. No, you go to see the nutritionist. You let the nutritionist put you on course. You come back and tell us what we're going to eat. And those of us who can't do it, won't do it, then we have to find an alternative. That's a family dynamic that there has to be give and take. There has to be compromise, and we figure out a way to make it work.
Well, the goal is you bring it back, and everybody else begins to eat a little healthier.
Yep.
Perhaps.
Funny how that works.
So yeah. So for
Yeah.
example, I know just as the person who prepared most of the meals, it is so easy
All
to
of
make
the
casseroles. It's so
can't
easy to make
cook.
casseroles. It's so easy to make all the things with like white carbs in it. All the macaroni, the noodles. It goes, far. You can have leftovers. It's something that's comfort food. Everybody seems to like it. But that's just not what we should be eating that much of, honestly. So if you figure out how to take that away and substitute something else for that, if you figure out, okay, I'm going to make sure, and some of it's preparing the meals ahead of time, a lot of pre-planning, thinking about that. So you've got to shift your mindset a little bit when it comes to that as well.
Yeah.
And what you're going to do, what you're going to buy at the store, what you're going to serve, and what you're not going to have in the house. Because if you don't buy it, you can't fix it.
Hello.
So I said potato chips.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy.
Potato chips and all the other things like that. But anyway, yeah, having a little something, a treats once in a while, yeah, you got to have that because that's life. But you want to make sure that's not your staple every day.
So, and that's just a little company statement about nutrition. The strength training part of it, we'll talk about that a lot again, because when we finally dig into strength training and talk about it, I do talk about that muscle fiber loss occurring beginning pretty early in our adult lives. And so we do want to do things to strength train. But the real focus today that we wanted to talk about and do some demos and speak to is the cardiovascular part of the cardio training.
Yeah, we're just going to show a little bit of film.
And cardio training is a fascinating thing. I remember... when we talk about cardiovascular training, I had a list of things. I wanted to make sure I don't leave anything out. Running, power walking, swimming, dancing, jumping rope, high-intensity sports like basketball and soccer. Those are all cardiovascular events, activities, I should say, that enhance endurance, cardiovascular endurance. And let me just start and establish the why. Because the first question anybody with a brain thinks when you look at this, well, why do I care about that? Why do I care about that? Because you are not able to live a day of your life that doesn't include some cardiovascular requirement.
True. Yeah.
And so because of that, it's something that we should at least give a little attention to so that we're not breaking the fire extinguisher all day, right? You're breaking the glass and grabbing the extinguisher because everything is falling apart. How about if we're always at a place where we're safe and we don't start fires and we don't need a fire extinguisher? An example, when I used to train people, in the middle of training, even when we do endocycle classes or training lifting weights, I would say, do not drop your end of the television. Don't drop it. You keep it up. But this is uncomfortable. But do not drop my TV set. And my whole point was, if we're moving a television, I can't have you stopping in the middle of the staircase to sit your end down because it's too heavy and we're going to fall. Hold up your end.
Yeah.
And that is a normal life, real life activity, is moving something. The thing that I used to say to a lot of people that, well, I'd had some people in my class who never moved a television and they weren't going to move a television, but I did say this. If you live in a house and that house has a staircase, unless you are one of the very few people I know that are fortunate enough to have your washer and dryer on the second floor, when you wash and dry your clothes, you put them in a basket and you take the basket up the steps. I know of a lot of people who get to the top of the step and they have to pause because their heart rate is racing and they have lost their breath. I'm going to say something that I very seldom ever say. I never criticize people. If you are going up and down your staircase with a basket and you're losing your breath, look in the mirror and tell yourself that is not acceptable. I should be able to carry a doggone basket of clothes up steps and not feel like I'm going to pass out. And if I
Yeah.
am about to pass out from that, I need to do some cardiovascular endurance training.
Yeah, because that's systemic, head to toe.
Yes.
It's everything. It's your
Yes.
heart, your lungs. It's and the thing about cardio is doing enough cardio is going to help you lose that weight.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to
If
recite.
that's what your goal is.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll
yeah.
say,
I'm not going to recite any statistics because honestly, and you say go, everybody's goal should be to get up the basket, get up the steps
yeah.
with a basket. Because I'm not going to recite the statistics. I'm going to encourage every man and woman listening to this to go out and look at the American Heart Association statistics on females and heart attacks. It's stunning.
Yeah.
It's like mind blown. She died from a what? A heart attack. She seemed fine. Stop it. Stop saying that. Stop it. We're not training these systems. And when we call on these systems to do something that's really way out there, they're going to fail us. And they're failing us at ages that's just not acceptable. We are just too smart. We're too smart. We have too much data. We have too much information. Sidebar. If you have a friend or colleague who smokes, I'm going to invite you to challenge them. We have too much data. I had uncles. I'm old enough to have had a whole generation of uncles and relatives that smoked. They smoked because they had very little data that pointed to what it's doing.
And by the time the data came out and you knew it, you were addicted to it, and it was very, very hard to quit.
Right.
What concerns me actually is young people who are smoking now, because we do have the data and we do know. And anyone who's smoking, just stop smoking. Find a way to quit. Find a program, whatever. Just don't smoke.
Yeah, because you're going to pay. It's like the toll road. You can get on there if you want to and not have the money to pay. They have cameras. They have all sorts of things that you are going to pay.
Yeah.
And some activity that we subject ourselves to, like smoking, is almost like the lack of endurance training. We are going to pay. There's going to be some life situation that's going to send your heart rate to a place that you never imagined. And I'll give you a perfect example. Years ago now, I will never forget. I think the most amazing heart rate I've ever experienced that I remember had nothing to do with a workout. It had to do with an emergency call with a family member. And immediately it went from a great sunny day to they were in grave condition. And my heart rate, you can almost pass out from that stuff.
Yeah.
And if you don't think that's endurance, stop. It's connected. It's not, you don't get a bad news call and it's a different heart that's being used. It's the same heart. It's the same cardiovascular system. I consider this stuff to be life training. I was fortunate enough to shut up long enough and be quiet long enough to really understand my history's background and going back to my life's health history background and going back to what we talked about with the doctors and kind of bringing us all together. I'd seen in my one side of my family a number of circulatory, cardiovascular related issues. And it's almost like God was saying to me, I'm going to let you see this one time. I'm not going to spend any time on it. Act accordingly. I'm out. And once I saw it, I started to give more attention to cardiovascular training. And the short version of this story is I ended up teaching indoor cycling. Fascinating, because that began to immediately minister, if you will, to my cardiovascular system. As I grew older, my classes stopped. I started doing more things here. And again, I was kind of moved in the direction of, are you doing enough cardio? I'm not. I remember, and I was a football player in high school. I thought the track kids were crazy. Those children all needed help. They're just running. Where are they running to? No place. Serious? When they race, what are they racing? Just to the ribbon. Serious? That's it? They're just running? They just run, cross-country runners were really, it was almost like people who were just, they didn't have anything else to do. I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
Well, now, I'm at 62. Yesterday, a couple of days ago, I had my first 5 mile run in a long time, actually years. I mean, maybe 10 years. And I'm finding a tremendous value in that because cardiovascular training, all of those items that I listed, one of the benefits of it, the whole thing that we're talking about is your body's ability to process air. How quickly can you get it in? How much air can you get into? This whole doping thing that we looked at, that we heard about with Lance and all of these other people in the cycling world, this is about air and blood and making it move faster and your body processing it faster. There's some ways to naturally process it faster. And there's a formula for the real geeks in this that are listening that are just starting to get into this stuff. Max VO2 is a fascinating thing that even at 62, I'm testifying, you can improve your max VO2, your oxygen uptake to your body. It is hard.
Yeah.
It is not what I would call highlight stuff, not what I call a funny, happiest part of the day. But man, at the end of it, and I noticed that things are different. I'm an asthmatic. I've never had asthma attack, but I've been diagnosed as being asthmatic. And all of these things I do to process my lungs, especially in this period of COVID, which is nothing but respiratory. Doing anything that enhances my ability to breathe, my ability to process oxygen in advance of anything like that, it probably is a good idea. If you were ever going to do anything for your oxygen uptake or your cardiovascular system, 2020 might be a good year to start. Yeah, big time.
Yeah. So for someone who is looking to start out or, kind of introduce cardio, more cardio into what their routine is, there are a number of things that you have done. You've done cycling, you do running now, but there are other things that can be done as well. You named a lot of them at the beginning, which are great, and kind of like, okay, jumping rope. Oh, I used to do that when I was 6,
Yeah.
So you've got that.
It's a little different when you're 60. Just warning to everyone. Warning.
Yeah. But what are some of the things what are some of the other things that people can do that you do here that might be kind of interesting to?
So one of my greatest gifts is my gift to continuously learn and to understand how little I know about life as we know it. And so I'm always open to new things. I was a revolutionary. I am never going to agree. I'm arguing and debating everything associated with Apple and these stupid rings when it first came out. One of the rings that they talked about was standing. So it caused me to revolutionize my thinking. I had a friend who had multiple strokes who asked me about getting back, similar question to yours. And I talked to them about walking. Well, I'm going to change that and I'm going to go back even different. What I would tell anybody to do first is to reach a point where you're standing up for some period of at least 12 hours a day. And in the whole world of the Apple.
You mean during each hour, you're doing kind of the Apple Watch thing.
Yes, exactly.
So for at least 12 hours a day, 12 hours within a day, you stand up for some period during each hour.
Yes.
Right. And you're doing some kind of activity, some kind of movement, because your body can, it feels good to sit there for a minute, but
and it sounds goofy.
Yeah.
Until if anybody out there knows what I'm talking about, they know what I'm talking about. The first time you have a job that's on your feet the entire job, and you actually stand for 7 hours, you go home tired.
That's true.
Like, what in the world?
Yeah.
And so
it was so funny how Kelly, our daughter, just said just a few minutes ago, I'm never getting an Apple Watch. It's so weird the way you all just stand up all of a sudden and just turn around and do things. It's like,
it's weird at first, but it is something too. It's something that happens to your body from a standing position versus a sitting position that's equal to work, right? And so that's where I would suggest to people to look at something that mimics that behavior that gets you first standing. And there is a lot of data out there about standing, and I used to argue about this steps thing. Right? So I'm going to get you standing and then I'm going to get you to walking. Nobody's getting off the couch and run. That's just not going to happen. Feet, knees, ankles, shins. Nobody just gets off a couch and starts running. So you might get off a couch and start walking.
And walking is great.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Because you can control your pace and that kind of thing. And
it's fantastic.
I don't run. I'm probably never going to run. But walking I can do. That's good. My knees bother me. And one of the things that I do, and we were talking earlier about just preparing to go out and do something. If you'll see me, I always have these like knee sleeves on, because they just kind of help provide support, and I can do more with them on, and my knees don't bother me as much.
Yeah.
So there are other things too that we'll talk about a little bit later, that you can do to kind of, help stabilize that. But So if I'm walking, or if you're running,
Yeah.
that too, you can use that. So
Yeah.
you could walk, you're running, you're cycling.
And let me just go back to the walking, because the walking is a fascinating thing. I've had some people to tell people about how to walk. I'm not about to get into that, because this is like, that's so many rabbit holes to go into. A walking technique. I was walking at 1.5 maybe, and that's kind of the way it's been. Pronation, things that your feet are doing, shoes that are best for that. That's for a professional to look at, and you can perhaps make that experience better. But I would once that's understood, is understanding how much do I walk, right? So there was a whole thing about 10,000 steps,
Right.
and then there was a study that said you don't need to do no 10,000 steps, 7,000 steps. And so the whole thing is, you'll find that almost all of these equations have to do with how much activity and how many calories are burned based on that number. So that's what the real debate is about, right? So what we're looking at almost always in general, if I can get you from sitting and laying and eating chips to standing up, move you from standing to walking, the distances that we walk, I am going to always push. That's what I do. That's what I do with you. I think the only way to get your muscles to respond, we have a lot of theories that support this and a lot of science that supports it, is to push beyond where you currently are.
Yeah.
So if I'm standing and I get my standing down and I'm up to a point now where I'm standing up throughout the day at work or wherever I am, and I'm not getting as tired, now I'm ready to start walking. I might do my 2,000 steps. I might move to 7,000 steps. There is science that said the health benefits of 10,000 steps do not tremendously exceed 7,000 steps. Well, you want to read that a little closer, because believe me, a person that is walking for 7,000 steps versus a person that's running for 14,000 or 21,000 steps, it's a different effect. They're getting different results from that experience. So don't just listen to the highlight and read just a little bit of those articles. Go into depth into what that's saying, and synchronize with what you're trying to do. What are you trying to do with it?
But you also have some other things that you're doing, where you have a rowing. You're
Yes.
you're fortunate that you have equipment here.
I'm blessed. I'm a blessed man.
But
Correct.
there are things that people can think about that they might have access to
Right.
as well. So, for example, if you say you have a canoe, and you want to go rowing, but you've got a rowing machine,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you
yeah.
can do that. You've got that climbing thing. What is
Yeah,
that called?
smack the climber.
Okay.
In some gyms,
yeah,
it's a
that's-
VersaClimber. There's a number of
Okay.
options out there.
Yeah, so you've got that. And also what yoga is also kind of cardio oriented, right?
Well,
It's like-
it can
seems like
have some effects.
It drives my watch up if I ever try
Right,
it,
right.
so
But I mean, you're not going to be able to effectively compare the results from cardio yoga versus running. Right.
No, it's
those
gonna
are
be
very
different.
different. The cardio, but there is some. But I would say to the list that I gave you at the beginning, and I would use yoga. It's almost like, man, there's so many things that it does. It is a wonderful exercise form that everybody should include, but I would not lump that into my list of
Okay.
cardiovascular training items. That's a good question. I'm glad you asked that.
No, I just asked because if I do that on my watch, I see my heart rate go up.
And it will.
So yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's the older you get,
Yeah,
the
okay.
more
But
the more
it's a-
rigid your
but
bones
different
become, the more
category.
your heart rate goes
But-
up when
but-
you try to hold yoga position. If you're not a veteran at that,
Yeah,
but
but-
so the cardio. We do want to train that. We do want to be specific about our training. And you mentioned the different tools that we have. The reason that we do have the tools that we have, we've been blessed with being able to buy those and have those available to us. But the advantage that gives us is repetitive use of almost any body part. If we don't work it right, will lead to some kind of injury or fatigue. We talked before about this, how your body, I believe, is shooting up flares all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm a little tired.
You have to pay attention.
And if you don't pay any attention, it's okay. Okay, I'm going to give you a little twist right here. Okay, I'm getting ready to tear right here. Okay, I'm torn. And
Yeah.
so you're getting all those warnings and you have to pay attention. I was just talking to my brother today, and I was telling him, he was talking about distance and time and all of these things. And he was talking about bike versus walk. This is a fascinating conversation, just happened today. And I said to him, I would maybe do every third day, get on the bike and just let your feet and your knees rest, because the bike is not going to be it's not going to have the same impact that walking will.
You're right. And what I noticed, well, because I started integrating that because my knees bothered me, so I stopped doing some of the walking I was doing and got back to the bike. But then I decided to get back into walking because I was doing this 5 mile thing with Dr. Josefina last year. And when I started integrating and switching up between the bike and the walking, I found that my body reacted better because I kind of it gotten used to one thing. And when you integrate something else into it as well and mix it up a little bit better, it seems to react better. And so I just noticed changes that were occurring that, I think I probably had gotten kind of stagnant with just riding the bike.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it's almost like on the bike, you're able to work your cardiovascular system, but not tax your knees, your ankles in the same way that you do. And the same thing, I would even go as far as a treadmill versus outside walking. Pavement outside is going to be a little more brutal on ligaments and tendons and bones and your body than a treadmill will.
Yeah, it does not forgive.
Yeah.
And the treadmill's got that.
And the bike is even more forgiving. So it gives you those things. The Maxi Climber is a whole different thing in terms of what body parts are emphasized and used. And some things, I'm starting to get into this geeky, get ready to use geeky language, closed chain versus open chain. And that just happens. Those happen. That has to do with if I hold on to something and I don't let go, it's a closed chain. When I open it and I have to grab it repeatedly, that's opening that chain. And when I open it, it has to be placed correctly. And if I don't place it correctly, it puts potential stress on something, which leads to injury. So all of those things are better. So it's better to revert back to some of those closed chain, tighter things, the rower versus the bike versus running versus walking. They're all different ways to achieve and accomplish cardiovascular endurance, but they affect your body differently. And I'm always trying to find I think I mentioned this the last time. For everything that we do that's related to fitness, there's this invisible matrix. And the invisible matrix says if I do this, and this, when all those boxes are checked, I got a strain. When all of these boxes are checked, I have a pull. If all of these are checked, I have a break. So I'm trying to understand and always know what the matrix is telling me, because at 62 years old, an injury just kills me. I was doing deadlifts and I pulled my back. And that's a 2-week deal.
Right.
I am slow pedaling on a bike for 2 weeks behind that. And I have a lot of friends that it's much worse. I'm fortunate enough to be in good enough condition that I can recover in 2 weeks. But most of us can't afford that. So we can't afford injury. We have to stay in. And for anybody that's a trainer, the only advice I give every trainer, and I feel like I am smart enough and good enough to tell every trainer this: you cannot make money if your people stay hurt.
That's true, yeah.
And so you have to train with wisdom yourself as well as your clients to make sure that there is nothing that you're doing that's entering into a realm where injury is a possibility. There is no strength gain if you are not a paid athlete. There is no strength or speed gain that you're going to achieve that's worth the risk of injury. It's just not worth it. You can run a 4.340 if you want to, and you're going to go to work tomorrow just like you went to work today. Yeah. It's not going to change a thing. So if you're going to get hurt trying to get to that 4.3, it's not worth it. Same thing with a 500-pound bench press. The bench 500 is great, but tomorrow morning, you're going to go to work.
You're going to pay for that.
You're going to go to work, but you also begin to run the risk of injury as the poundages increase. So you have to use some wisdom in that. That's all I'm saying. Is just be smart. I'm proud of your 500. You let me know, and I'll tweet about it. I'll talk about it. Yeah. But I don't want you to get hurt. I know of professional athletes who lost their positions and lost eventually their jobs due to injury during training, which to me didn't make any sense. That wasn't the way to go, because their strength was adequate. They did not have to get 10 pounds stronger in their bench press to do their job. And they lifted themselves basically out of a job. And that doesn't make sense to me. That's just one man's idea. Yeah.
Well, as we wind up, if you can just repeat a couple of those things you mentioned, the exercises that are easy for people to perhaps get into that will kind of boost the cardio, and tell me a little bit about how much cardio you should try to get in per week or per day or per session or whatever. What's your recommendation on that?
So let me first, and then I looked at the list, and I'm going to do it this way. The cheapest, the most inexpensive items, because that's where we really live. A jump rope is $9. I can get you jump ropes on Amazon for $9 all over
Or
the place.
walking can cause you a pair of tennis shoes.
Walking is free.
Yeah.
Dancing was one of them, free. Running, a little more difficult depending on where you're starting your fitness journey, but it's a free item. Things like swimming are a little more expensive, but just absolutely awesome. That is what I believe eventually will carry me into my older years of training, will be swimming, because it is just so non-impact. And that's a word I haven't used, but that's a big deal with all of this. Of course, basketball and soccer, if your body can handle it, are just fantastic. It is nothing like a 62-year-old playing basketball with 20-year-old kids, especially when I fall and I bounce back up. That is like so incredibly cool. Everybody just says, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Run it." And everybody's like, "Oh, he's so weird." And that's just a cool thing.
And, there also, I'm going to mention too, and there are also a number of apps now. You can just kind of follow those, and you can just watch those programs and exercise along with them. So
you were talking about frequency. So I mean, there are people who run every day. There are people who walk every day. It depends on what your goal is. And again,
what's the minimum you should do for just health purposes?
Well, I think in almost all of the data that I've seen, it takes 20 minutes before you begin to use, you begin to really burn efficiently fat. You got to get 20 minutes in.
Okay.
So at a minimum, 20 minutes. And after 20 minutes, we're really talking about what's the point where I begin to sustain fatigue and I begin to risk injury, right? As long as I'm under that, if I can walk for an hour, it's fine. You're not going to hurt anything as long as your body can handle it, as long as you've worked up to it.
Okay, so start at least for 20 minutes.
Yes.
Work your way up, hopefully 30 minutes, because that's what they were saying. But recently, because of COVID, they're saying now you should work out for an hour a day. I was saying 30 minutes before because, you can sneak 30 minutes in there. But again, it doesn't have to all be at one time. You can break it up.
Right. And now you're talking about goals, right? So I want to lose my love handles. It's one amount of work. I want my core to be strong and my abs to be flat. That's another thing. And if you're weird, I have one of my URLs that I have, and one of these days I'm going to use it, 60 with a six-pack. If you're thinking six-packs after 60 years old, you're going to work. You're going to do a lot of cardio. You're going to do a lot of core work. And you're probably going to be working 6 to 7 days a week to achieve that look. So that's really, where are you trying to go? Right? But I want to be realistic. It's work, depending on your goals and objectives. So when you say that, I say at least 20. And my suggestion to anybody be dream in color.
Yeah.
Dream. I mean, pull out those pictures of when you were 15 and 16 years old. Pull them out. You're not different. No alien came and replaced you. Yeah. That's the same body. The same body that maybe doesn't get the same care. Right. That maybe doesn't get the same time. Don't tell me what you can't do. I got too many people. And you talked about walking early. Just I'm going to close out my little version until you ask me something else with this. The most dramatic weight loss I've ever seen in my life. Ever. I worked in a gym. I watched the guy come in. He was about 215. He got on the treadmill and he walked 45 minutes. Got off the treadmill, walked out of the door. Next day, same thing. 6 months, same thing. A year, same thing. One day he came there when we were shoveling snow from the walkway. He and one other person came in the gym. I'll never forget this guy. He came in, same thing. I watched this dude melt. I remember he came in the gym one day and he had on some pants and he had a rope around his waist.
Wow.
And I said, my man, the rope, what is that? And he said, Rudy, I am not spending any more money on anything else until I know where I'm going, because I'm throwing my money away. I buy stuff and in 2 weeks I can't wear it because I'm still losing weight like crazy. He wasn't doing any drugs. He wasn't doing anything. He was on that treadmill like religion every single day. I've never seen, from weight training, running, I've never seen anybody sustain a work that long, that consistent, and see the results that he got. So when you talk about walking, when you talk about these different methods of cardiovascular training, the walking's insane. And my respect, I was humbled in that year because I had all of these things. Mr. America, Mr. Olympia, yeah. And it's like all those guys were getting hurt having
Yeah.
shoulder surgeries, having all kinds of stuff. Dude on the treadmill, and everybody left that treadmill for him. And so everybody knew what time he was coming in. He did the same treadmill and he'd hit it every day. So there is no limit to what you can do with this if you get past yourself and what's between the ears and just get on it and get going. Grab the shovel, dig the hole. Just get the work in.
Right. Just start doing it. Yeah.
Yep.
So there's some good tips in this. Thank you so much, as always, for sharing.
Gosh, I
all
love
that.
these conversations.
Really?
Oh, I do. I do.
But there's some easy ways to kind of get started, and then you can build on that and do more and more. It's not about how you look; it's about your health.
Absolutely.
And taking care of yourself. We talk about self-care. I love the item. When I think of self-care, I think about going to a spa, but it's beyond that. But it's living a healthy life and taking care of your body.
Yes.
And your mind.
Yes.
And all those good things. So be sure to send your questions to robin@maxwellsplaybook.com. This will be on Maxwell's Playbook's YouTube channel as well. And we're really happy that you let us share this information. Hope that it's very helpful to you. So thanks for listening.